Good afternoon, everybody. Great pleasure to be here. Welcome, Marco, to our conference.
Thank you, Judith. Thank you, everyone. Nice to be here. Thank you.
Marco and I, we had the pleasure of working together many moons ago, but not too long ago.
Not too long ago, no.
At the Atlantis in Dubai here. I was the head of revenue optimization, and we had very successfully implemented best practices for rooms revenue management. And at the time, I had the great pleasure of working with the late Saul Kersner, and then he says, Judith, you know, it's 1,500 key hotel. We have so many people coming through the doors. Let's talk about F&B, revenue optimization. How can you make more money? So then I thought, okay, great, you know, we have all the theories and we know what to do. And then I thought, okay, let's do revenue optimization for the restaurants. And then I walked into the head of F&B's office and I says, I need to optimize, I need to maximize your revenues. And the doors were pretty much shut instantly. And that's what we're here to discuss today is, you know, how do you break down the barriers and how do you get everybody on board? And I said to the head of F&B at the time, I said, give me one outlet. Let me prove you on how we can do that. So he gave me Seafire, which is the steak restaurant, which was doing quite well already, but between 6 and 8 o'clock in the evening, there was no footfall, so hardly anybody in the restaurant. And then what do? You speak to sales and marketing. How can we activate the outlet? And what's the first suggestion that comes to mind? Let's do an early bird. All right? So then $30,000 later, nobody came. So then, you know, previously I was based in Thailand and they told me, no, Judith, you don't understand. Dubai is a late dining culture. So then they told me, okay, Judith, you know, we've just wasted $30,000. We told you Dubai is a late dining culture. But then from 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, the restaurant was absolutely hammered. And we had to take a step back. You know, from analyzing the data that we had, we took a health check at the systems. And then to cut a long story short, it just turned out that the system wasn't set up. So out of 120 seats or so, I don't remember the exact number, only 20 people were able to dine between 6 and 8 o'clock. And why? Because somebody during the pre-opening stages made the decision to limit the capacity so that the kitchen wasn't getting overrun with early seaters. But the kitchen was getting absolutely hammered then from 8 or 9 o'clock in the evening. And then in about 6 months' time, the restaurant generated over $1 million more in revenues by just opening up the gates. But we're here to talk about now, you know, with Marco. And Marco, why don't you introduce yourself from an F&B operations side, you know, your experience, and then we dive into how we can break down the barriers.
Sure. First of all, it was a pleasure working with Julie in Atlantis. So we had many years of tenure in Atlantis. But my background is also Mandarin Oriental. So I work in Asia. Also, back in the days in London was Terence Conran Restaurant Group. So I come from a restaurant group background, then now migrated into hotels, and then, of course, Atlantis. And later now I'm in Saudi Arabia, working for Coolink as Director of Operations. So we also run 20 different brands. So that's where my experience comes from. But what Judith was talking about is how can we break the barriers? And early days when we saw Julie coming into our restaurant was like, you know, what's going to be happening here? You know, what is she looking at? What is she trying to understand? And you know, for us operations, we are very protective of who we are and how we do things. So to have someone from another department coming in and trying to, you know, have you looked into this? How about that? And it starts, you know, your mind starts to open up. And one of the first barriers that we actually have is having the leadership from the top actually supporting us in trying to understand how we can work together better and how we can take advantage from the data that we have to actually not only benefit the revenues, but also improve on the service that you have. A lot of it, and I know we have a certain timelines, but a lot of the efficiencies that we learned during that experience really help to cement the service that we have for the different level of restaurants that we do. And also optimize the revenue. So in terms of how we see it, the leadership needs to accept this change, and that needs to filter down towards all the other different departments, from marketing, from sales. You have your procurement, very, very important as well, and the finance. So all need to work together towards breaking down all these barriers to get revenue management into restaurants.
Thank you. So let's start at the beginning. So when, if somebody now at the hotel from a revenue management perspective wants to implement F&B revenue management, where are the areas from a systems perspective, from a reporting perspective, that you would recommend to start at from a clean data perspective? But then also, how do you get everybody then from an operations side onto the journey? A lot of times, when you speak with operations, I'm not saying everybody, but decisions are made based on gut feelings versus the actual facts.
Correct. And look, operations, they work extremely hard every day. And if you add them another task, which is, how can we look now into your data to understand it a bit better and become more efficient? We need to take our own time to be able to achieve that. And this is where the difference is between the ones that actually can do it and the ones that struggle to do it, is you need to take your own time to achieve this, because this is not your normal operation. You have to take time aside to look into your data. And to the point that you just made, the systems that we're going to be extracting the data from, extremely important, so that the decisions that you're going to be taking are system data-based, not based on someone's gut feeling that had an experience in the past. So it's very important to start with the systems, and with systems you implement processes that keep those systems clean. And it's only by implementing those processes that your system's going to be running smoothly and that you'll be able to actually extract the data that you need. So definitely the systems. If you want to dig a bit deeper into the systems, I give you an example. In Atlantis, we had over 20 outlets, and we were using a specific point of sale system. I'm not sure if I can mention names now, but we were using a point of sale system for a certain amount of years. And we tried then to implement revenue management, which is trying to go into the different family groups, the different segmentations, and understanding particular item, where it's going to fall. And we started to see that different items started to fall into different categories because no one was maintaining the system. So the data that we were all trying to extract from it, it was, but this is what it is, this is how much you are selling the starters, that's how many you're selling the main courses, the volumes and the revenues. And actually was not. So we tried then to correct the system, and we ended up like, it's not going to work. We have to start from scratch. And what we ended up doing was we upgraded our point of sale system, and we actually deleted all the information that we have before. And we started from fresh. We started implementing new family groups, new items per restaurant, and we actually compile for every single restaurant. What that means is that you start from a fresh base. You start from a foundation that if you maintain that, then you have processes in place to maintain that, and that's what keeps the systems clean. For example, the operations every month needs to take a report to ensure that items in the point of sale system are only the items that you have on the menu, nothing else, so that doesn't get lost in translation. So this is just to give you an example of how systems and data is important for the revenue management.
The data cleaning at the time took over a year. So then, you have to imagine, then somebody like me then comes and wants to, revenue manage. But then what are you revenue managing? Because the data that you're evaluating is just simply not the accurate data. And that was a very big eye-opener from my side. I thought I could start straight away with the menu engineering and the menu design, but then actually what are you evaluating if the system isn't clean? In terms of systems, when you look at whether it's the restaurant reservation system, it's the recipe management system, it's your point of sale system, it's all these items, they need to have very strong standards and procedures. That was one of the biggest learning from my side. And that was the first area for collaboration with then also F&B operations, for F&B operations to understand why that is so important. And then also to take the fear factor from the data away, right? So then we worked on what reports and what data is actually relevant for each head of each outlet in order to run the business. Correct. And then also then from the chefs. And then we were able to start talking about the menu engineering and the menu design. And then we were able to start having strategy discussions where we invited then also then the sales, marketing, and the PR teams around the table I scheduled the first meeting, and guess how many showed up? It was just me, myself, and I. Because people that were either too busy, it was the wrong timing, or maybe there was also a certain fear factor on, what do I do in a revenue strategy meeting? She's going to increase my pricing. She wants to implement dynamic pricing, etc., etc. So why don't you talk a bit about, how do we really liaise with operations in order to make that happen?
Yes, and a very good point. What really helped us a lot. So to implement the revenue management for restaurant operations, it's crucial to have someone that knows operations from the revenue management side. And sometimes what we did in Atlantis is we had someone that was actually a food and beverage operator, had the experience in food and beverage, that then went into revenue management and managed to bridge that gap. And that was very, very important because for us operation, we see the supporting services, 9 to 5, and when the operation really happens, everyone is home. No one is there to observe. And this is, I'm talking without, to be very realistic. The magic happens when the guest is there from 6 o'clock in the evening to 12 o'clock, but no one from revenue management is ever seen in the outlet to see actually how is that being implemented and how we can become more efficient being implemented. The advantage that we had is that someone from the operations that already understood bridged that gap between the revenue management team. So that person was then the revenue management F&B and helped to bridge the gap, and already understanding the data and understanding the operation, we managed to bridge that together and really find great results and then put processes in place. And I need to emphasize processes to make sure that regardless if you're there or not, those processes are maintained and are improved. So I just wanted to touch a point on that one.
No, that's a very good point. And then from there, because then we had that bridge to F&B operations where we're able to have the strategy meetings. Then we had somebody from F&B operations being comfortable in the meeting. And then also then, again, it's fast forward. It took about a good 6 months to build that culture with workshops and with training, getting everybody on board. And then in the end, the meeting room was packed because people also knew that decisions were made in that meeting room and not on the fly. Discussions took place. We took then the sales, marketing, and PR departments onto the journey. Because then also, what did we have? We thought that maybe then the pasta was the most profitable item on the menu. We did the menu engineering, the menu design. But then on Instagram and other social media channels or in discussions from a commercial side, we're promoting then the steak. Yeah. And then also then we had to train the waiters to actually then focus on selling or on recommending to the guests what are the most profitable items, the way that we have placed them, so really to hone everybody in. But Marco, from your side, what are your biggest frustrations when it comes to, working with, let's say on commercial strategies, revenue management, and what's your advice for the audience?
So it's really, once you have the vision and you have the tools in place, it's becoming consistent and doing it well. Consistency, it will determine if you're going to be successful or not. And if you have processes in place, you need to follow them through. And for me, it was trying to get not only the operations team to adhere to that, but also the other supporting functions like finance, marketing, sales, procurement, to have everyone working together towards it. And it's going to take time. And mistakes are going to happen, but you need to keep let's say, a finger pulse on all the different departments to make sure that everyone is pulling together and trying to achieve the same goals. I give you an example. For me, what is important is for training to be developed within each department and within the operations. For example, that particular restaurant, for the restaurant managers and the executive chefs to take the ownership of the revenue management. This is the ultimate goal, is for them to take the ownership of their own outlets and with the tools that we prepare for them to drive it and become more efficient. And training aspect for it. With that, you can always develop something else even greater. We went actually 2 or 3 steps ahead. We developed then efficiency. So, for example, you have a waiter. Marco, the waiter, I could take your report of that particular evening, the previous evening, and I could see all the waiters, and I could see all the bartenders, and I could see the efficiencies. What I mean by that is this waiter better selling the starters than the desserts, or he sells more the key items, our stars, instead of selling the puzzles. So I could actually see the key strengths or weaknesses of each of the team members and automatically apply on-the-job trainings to correct that, and to correct that in a way in order to facilitate the menu engineering that we have determined for that particular menu items, how to upsell, how to propose. So all this is interlinked. So if you have a tool that is actually able to capture this data for you to see these efficiencies, then you go the next step. You implement, let's say, an upselling program that is monetary incentivated. What I mean by that is that you will have a certain items that you want to sell because you know that achieves a certain profitability. And the challenge for those waiters, for example, is to achieve a perfect check. So in your restaurants, what is a perfect check? So from your drinks on arrival, what is the drinks that have most profitability? From your, let's say, wine menu, which one is the one that brings you more profitability, depending on what white or red, whatever the guest chooses. And then the starter is exactly the same. What are the most profitable starters, profitable main courses, and profitable desserts, to keep it simple? So what are those top three? And that will become your perfect check. That's what you train your team to upsell. And that's your training becomes, let's say, correlating to the upselling incentive that you have. So more you sell, more you'll get an incentive monetarily.
So doing the cleanup, and then building the processes and the procedures together, doing the education, and very important, building the culture, took us a good 2, if not 3 years to get to where we really had to get to. And then also to get then the buy-in from the celebrity chef restaurants, right?
Yes, that's enough.
So because then, they have their own procedures and their own way of doing it. But then I think, one of the claim to fame was that then the Bread Street Kitchen, Gordon Ramsay's restaurant, per square meter, became the most profitable in all of his restaurants in the entire portfolio. So that was really one of the big success stories, above and beyond what has been achieved, because it's not easy. You have your fast food restaurants, then your casual dining, high energy, and your fine dining restaurants.
Yes, I mean, you have to take a different approach to each of them, analyze the data, understand the data, and again, put processes in place that your team can be trained on it. And keep it simple. Focus on the 20% that makes the 80% happen. The simpler you keep, the more results you will achieve at the end. So keeping it simple, focus on the 20%, that's my recommendation. And to just one point, what Judith was mentioning about having other brands in our portfolio that have their own brand standards. I will not mention the brand, but I'm going to give you an example. They have a menu for the past 20 years. This is one of the biggest brands in the world, and their let's say, the menu price is actually in bold. So the first thing that your mind and your eyes go to it is those big, bold prices. I don't want the guest to take a decision on what he's going to experience based on the price. I want to be based on the menu experience and the reason why he's there for the restaurant. So this is just a small thing, but we only have limited time. There's many other aspects.
No, but you're absolutely right. If you have, if you get your menu design right, or your menu engineering and then your menu design, it becomes a customer-led upselling, so that the waiter, especially in fine dining restaurant, doesn't have to say, and today's special is what we're having. But thank you very much, Marco. This was amazing.
Yeah, thank you very much.
And thank you to the audience for listening.
Thank you. Thank you.